Oh, all right, we are recording. And what you're looking at immediately here is our Canvas website. Most of the materials will be posted on the website. May as well say that since it's opened right now. But let's get started. All right. So this class is called Transport Phenomena in Geosystems. Transport is something that is widely available, pretty much exists in every engineering discipline, and we are going to specialize it a little more subsurface systems and petroleum engineering. Again, my name is Masha Pradanovic. I'm best always reached via email, which is masha@utexas.edu. Bad part about my name is remembering how to spell it. Good part about my name is once you spell it, or at least you look it up on faculty at PGE, I'm the only one around. So I haven't managed to find another Masha Pradanovic out there so far online. So typically, if you're looking for my YouTube channel, well, the one that you find under my name that actually has some videos posted, that's the one. Okay. So I respond to a whole lot of things, Masha, Masa, Dr. P, if you don't want to handle my last name. I don't particularly personally care about titles, whether you call me doctor or professor, makes really no difference to me. So I'll meet you wherever it is that you are comfortable. What I don't like is when people say Masa, which is very easy to do given the way my name is spelled. It is Masha. So try to get that right, and everything else will be okay. So this is why also in my email and the way I sign myself in emails, there is an H, which is not officially there in my name. My name is either without the accent, big enough, or with the accent. My background is from Croatia. I think some of you went there with me during the summer abroad course. So I got my bachelor's in Croatia in applied mathematics, and then I came to United States for graduate school and just really stayed after that. So my master's and PhD are obtained from SUNY, the State University of New York in Stony Brook, and after that I moved to Texas. And I actually fell in love in Austin and with Austin, both as a city and this university. So I've been in Austin since I graduated. My research interests are in flow and porous media, digital rock petrophysics, some sediment mechanics, ferrohydrodynamics, whatever that means. What do you think it means? Iron in water, yes, but put there on purpose. And iron in which form? Stable solution of nanoparticles. Because only that way it's going to actually stay suspended. If it's bigger, if the particles are bigger, they're typically going to settle. And that if it's in magnetic field, the solution itself still flows just like you would expect it to, but it has some magnetic properties. There's a lot of magnetic flows where the particles are colloid size. So what is colloid size versus nano size? Colloids are which size? Microns are colloids. I went for flu last week, so it's very present in my mind. I'm not going to take this anymore. Says my doctor. I don't know. Let's believe her. Micron sizes, so micrometers, 10 to the minus 6 meters. Sizes are typically colloidal sizes. They will at some point settle down in any solutions if you have particles. If they're bigger than that, they will settle sooner, right? But nanoparticles, they actually could stay suspended because whatever buoyant force is acting on them is essentially, and they're such a small size that gravity doesn't really have a chance to act. There's also some randomized motion that can simply keep them suspended. Okay. now that we've figured that out. There's also something called data curation. So right now you're hearing more and more about data. How do we actually host data? In my case, my interest is hosting the research data that comes out of my research, which is getting, just like any data out there that you keep hearing about, it's getting larger and larger, and hosting it online so it's available for people to use and basically make decisions on is not trivial. Okay? So there is basically more and more research in just data curation. Now, our teaching assistant is hiding in the background, Mizan. So how about you introduce yourself and your interests?
Yeah. Hello everyone, this is me. I'm a fourth-year PhD student. I'm working with Dr. Marshall and also Dr. Mokushama. So my research is mainly particle transport simulation. For example, the problem of transport in the fractures, in the wellbore, or through the perforations.
Those are much larger particles than the nanoparticles I mentioned. So they might be actually hitting millimeter size, but they're placed by us for specific purposes in engineering. So a lot of now that we're actually talking about it, fluids come in different forms. The transport phenomena course will be a lot about fluids, but we often have very complex fluids. And a lot of them are complex simply because by their nature. So just in itself, oil is very complex fluid and has a lot of components. But the engineered fluids are actually some of the most complex and keeping them operational. So for instance, drilling fluid has to flow. Well, drilling fluid has a whole lot of additives that don't want to flow. Right? So the proppant suspensions are one such example fluid. So those are actually systems that are getting pretty complex. We're not necessarily going to get to those because they're actually advanced. However, they're very important because for all of the different applications, you need to keep those fluids operational, and you need to figure out what their flow properties are. So you will basically, this course is foundation for building up all of these other knowledge. So let's just briefly, I will very briefly introduce what is our motivation for studying transport phenomena in petroleum engineering, and then we will walk over the syllabus. So for today, that's essentially going to be the class, just to introduce the course. Before I head into transport phenomena, what have you heard about the class so far? What are your reservations, or do you have any thoughts about the class?
I heard it's the hardest.
Just right. That's sincere. Anything else? Why is it hard? What's the hard part about it?
I think they understand some of the concepts are just hard to grasp and to understand.
Okay, so concepts are all around us. What's the biggest problem? So conceptually, it's actually relatively simple. When is fluid going to flow? What is the driving force for a fluid to flow? Is your fluid going to jump up somehow? Okay, so there has to be a driving force. Gravity would be one, so if I actually place this fluid really high, and it's got flow, it's going to flow. So I need pressure gradient is the driving force for fluids to flow. If there is pressure gradient, fluid will flow, especially if it has an open conduit. Otherwise, it will not. Technically, it's that simple. What's complicated is that fluids, when they flow, they're described in a very complex way. It matters a lot what is flowing. Is it water, or is it something uglier? Uglier, more complex fluid. Do we know how to describe it? Do we know how to describe if I'm calling a fluid ugly? What is ugly, right? So we need fluid properties, and some of them you have already been introduced to. And then do I have equations? Which equations do I solve? And that's where the devil sits. Equations that are basically governing fluid flow are some of the most complex equations out there. Second part of it is that it's not just fluid flow. So all of these properties that I might know right now in this environment, if I suddenly go to very high temperature, where my fluid might change phase. Okay? So if it changes a phase, that's the problem. Okay? Because suddenly we need to describe it differently. And if I have multiple different phases, they will start blocking each other. Okay? If I had air in my valves, that air is blocking air flow of any fluid. So whenever I have two different phases, they're going to start blocking each other off, especially in complex systems. So rock is a super complex system in terms of porosity of the rock and how the voids look. And this is where the trouble starts. So describing and solving those, the equations are what we refer to as nonlinear. So simplifying them to some sort of linear form we can actually solve even as a first order solution is the problem. And it requires some sort of help. So you either have to be very good at math, and 3 pages down after you basically pose your problem. Let's assume you posed your problem right. Everything is all well. You have a differential equation. So if you didn't really like differential equations, you might have issues. Okay? But maybe you also didn't like differential equations because they were too abstract when you learned them. So I just invite you to actually think like, look, this is basically what governs everything around you, and solving this is an important skill. Understand that it's difficult, but don't be put off by it. Just buy into it. And then we could also do numerical solutions, but that's not always easy. You gotta do some programming or find some way to numerically solve. And I think we've learned in 310 that that's not always straightforward either. So there's kind of like no free meal, but at the same time, it's some of the most fascinating subjects because it basically covers everything that we have. It's just that you kind of have to be fluent in some way of solving. You might prefer analytical, you might prefer numerical. Sometimes you need both. You will get stuck. So let's just get that out of the way. To this day, I still get stuck solving these problems. Because sometimes you just change boundary conditions slightly and suddenly the equation moves from the one you can solve to the one you cannot. Okay. It's just what it is. It is the same for everyone if that helps. So it's difficult for everyone, but I do invite you, it's a really fascinating topic, and I think it's the foundation. Even if you're gonna, in all other applications, you're just gonna use the formulas, this course should give you a foundation, like why is the formula, why does it look like the way it does, okay? So at least it should help out, okay? So our textbook is also, so that also brings me to the textbook. There is no such thing as ideal and easy textbook of transverse phenomena, precisely for these reasons that I outlined. It's kind of hard to approach. Do we start with the physics first? Do we start with the math first? We kind of need to start with just like properties of the fluids first. We kind of need everything combined to actually tackle the problem. So what you start with is kind of like a matter of choice. And my joke is that it took me teaching this course 3 times to actually really truly enjoy it, to basically get all of the pieces together. So I will, as I said, this is the textbook. Mine looks blue. This is actually a photo of mine. The most recent revised second edition might look red. Wherever you see blue is red. You might get a hold of an international edition. They are typically cheaper. You might get a hold of PDF. Whatever it is you get hold of, as long as you know how to use it, is your business. I'm not going to get into it, nor I will check. However, you will be allowed to have a textbook during the exam because there's a lot of reference formulas that we use. So for the exam, please make sure that you find a copy to use. And frankly, if you can't find a copy in this department, then it can look hard enough. Okay? Because this is one of the most common reference materials in transport phenomena. Whether it's the best one or not, it's one of the most comprehensive ones. So there are copies of them. Graduate students have them, undergraduate students have them. So you should be able to find a copy to use from maybe somebody ahead of you. So again, if you don't want to buy the book, you don't have to. I'm not in business of policing how you put together your study materials as long as you have access to them. Okay. Now, I will provide notes. I typically provide most of the notes at the very least to look at the class recordings. I do motivate you, or I would like you to write your own notes. And that is for your own benefit. Even when I do have PowerPoint materials, it's very easy to just like kind of go yes, 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 and know the way, and then turn around and realize you have no idea what did I just say. So please take notes. This is one of the courses where it's really beneficial to take notes. You've probably heard me say that before if you were in my other classes, but there is research saying that basically there is a very good feedback loop between your brain and with your hand. And even if you're typing notes, it is not the same. In terms of retention of the material, it's not the same. And the reason is that when you have to write it down, you're not going to go in what I call auto mode of just typing down whatever it is that you heard. You're actually going to process it slightly to shorten it. And in the process of thinking about it, shortening it, you have just made yourself easier to remember that later. So use that for what it's worth, but take notes. That's it. If you don't capture everything, that's what class recordings are for. Okay. But do make an attempt to make use of the time here in class. Right. So when we refer to transport phenomena, we are transferring most often momentum. Momentum is basically this gradient in pressure of basically flowing. And that's just simply how liquids and gases are. So the molecules will pull each other one by one and kind of roll down. That's not what solids do. So basically, that's the main difference. So it's very easy what we call to shear fluids. You kind of just push them and they go. Heat or energy transfer is another one. We always encountering when you have your cup of coffee and you hold it, you warm up your hands. That's essentially heat transfer, and it's technically not much more to it on the day-to-day basis than that. And then mass diffusion. Well, I don't know what's your sweetener of choice for, let's say, coffee, but if you drop something in your coffee, then there will be some basically higher concentration. So heat transfer, we go from higher temperature to a lower temperature. So temperature or existence of the temperature gradient is what drives the transfer. And in mass transfer, we have differences in concentrations of molecules. All of these can and do happen at the same time. And that's where more complexities arise. In terms of solving, we typically have to figure out what is the dominant mode of transfer that I actually have to focus on. That's often where some of the hardships, and then those are the concepts by themselves. Oh, I have a pressure gradient, therefore I should have momentum transfer, or I have concentration gradient, I should therefore have mass transfer. Those concepts by themselves are not difficult. It's difficult to figure out which one is the dominant one. Which one do you have to focus on? Because typically we can solve one at a time, maybe two, by so-called decoupling. Okay. So in that sense, you kind of have to figure out where to put our efforts into. So our motivation is that basically many petroleum engineering processes involve phenomena in which I transfer either heat, mass, or momentum from one location to another, and we have to be able to predict them. That said, transport phenomena is everywhere. We exist thanks to transport phenomena. So basically, every branch has its own specialized course in transport phenomena. Weather cycle is one example. Formation of landscape is another. Functioning of tissues or living organisms or transport in your lungs is also transport phenomena. In petroleum, though, we focus on oil and natural gas, and technically our society functions thanks to oil and natural gas. Transportation fuel is essential. To this day, for agriculture, agriculture was much transformed, and how we feed a lot of people was much transformed once we could actually go in with machines and mechanize it, and they basically require fuel. Getting to any place, from any place to any other, to school, to work, to earn a living, to visit, if you're just having fun, visiting relatives or traveling, all of that requires transportation fluid. And we also have an expectation of supply in stores. So all of the supply chains typically require transportation fuel as well. Okay? So oil provides to date the most fuel for transportation. Electricity is also essential. It provides sunlight. It enables us in this room. Otherwise, we wouldn't have classes in this particular room because there is no other source of light. We also power all of the appliances. In natural gas, there's a very good 30 to 40% that is still used to generate electricity. And then we have everyday materials that we encounter, from plastic bags, polycarbonates, to colors and dyes. There are many of them are petroleum-based. All of that, in its essence, basically requires flow. So before I go to the next slide, what is the either daily consumption or production of oil there typically matched? How much oil could go there in the world? Pretty close, pretty close. It's actually close to 100 right now. Well, they're matched because they are. So basically we're around 100. Now, 1 barrel is about 160 liters. So that's how much of it is produced. First, we have to produce it. Then we have to move it around. Most of the time, the biggest consumers and the biggest producers are not necessarily in the same location, which makes for interesting geopolitical landscape in this world, right? So it's moving around. Okay. And how can we, what's the only way to move around fluids? What did I say at the beginning? To have pressure gradients. If you're an engineer trying to figure out, now you might be a business person trying to make money off of all of the sales of all of those fluids, but ultimately those fluids have to move around and get from wherever it is that they're produced to whatever it is that they're consumed. Okay? And that happens in various ways. Now, just to visualize a little bit. So basically, I did the following calculation. Nominal size of an Olympic-sized pool, you're looking at the Jamal Swimming Center right there, is about 2.5 million liters. And there's US gallon equivalents. So 100 million barrels is about 16,000 million liters. So that means that you need to fill one of these pools, 4.4 of these pools every minute over a day to get to 100 million barrels per day. It's a lot to move around. I think we can agree with that. So that's just a little bit of so all of this flow is between regions. Now, basically, our society functions thanks to oil and gas, and well, global economy is built on it. And there's no oil and gas business without actually somehow flowing it. So this is our motivation to actually learn transport in petroleum engineering. So here's one way it could move around. It could move through very large pipes. This is after it's produced. So this is an example of a Trans-Alaska pipeline. Trans-Alaska pipeline, I think it's about 4 feet in places in cross section. So that's a very large pipe. And because it's a very large pipe, we're going to have flow that is also known as turbulent flow. So we will go into types of flow later. And basically, the nature of what you're flowing through also decides on what type of flow you have and which equations do you need to employ. And Trans-Alaska Pipeline is of great vintage. 1977 happens to be my vintage as well. Okay. Alaska Pipeline. So now, before we can actually get to the pipeline, we have to extract it. And for that, first we have to move through rocks. This is an X-ray. I apologize, I didn't put the lead scale, but this is about 1.3 millimeters blown up. So actually, the pipes that we initially flow through are very small. They're here in 3 dimensions. I'm just looking at an X-ray cross-section of the rocks, and you're looking at the empty spaces in between grains. So this is where the oil is initially moving through. Then it's getting to prop fractures. Proppant in fractures is what Min was talking about. She's looking at the properties of placing proppant into fractures to actually keep them open so you can keep producing. Then here we are flowing through fractures and then to the wellbore and out. And there's a little bit of a different view of a wellbore. So what basic geometries, if I was trying to simplify solving, what basic geometries are we flowing through? I mentioned a pipe already, and pipes are really of all sizes. What other? What would fracture be simplified as? If I have asked you to draw the simplest geometry you would like to solve as an example, split into planes. So a fracture will be, it's called parallel plates model. The most common models. So we will solve things in tubes with circular cross sections. We will solve things in parallel plates. What other geometry do I have in the valve? I'm trying to get it over there. Cylinder I already mentioned. That's a pipe with a circular cross section. Cylinder is a cylinder. What's left in between? Annulus. Cut that donut. Donut of sorts. So basically, another simple geometry is what happens. So if I was, for instance, to cement here, to do basically, I have to flow things in the annulus in between casing and the formation, right? That's an annulus in between two cylinders, right? And I better flow it. Cement initially flows, so it's fluid that will eventually solidify, but when it's flowing, it's fluid. Slowing flow of what we will refer to as a vapor fluid in annulus is going to be one of the, or we are going to be decomposing equations for that. Okay. So the simplest geometries there are essentially cylinder, parallel plates, annulus, and one more is flowing around a sphere, which is around a proppant or a sand grain. If I have sand grain settling in fluid, so basically flow around the sphere. Those are your 4 basic geometries that you're going to go over and over and over for all of the different types of transport. And that type of knowledge is actually at the core of transport anywhere. The equation is how we phrase what are the actual physical properties of the fluids that I use in the is something that is application specific. So oil has certain viscosity, or my drilling fluid can have certain rheological properties. They're specific to the drilling fluid itself. But that's in the equation at the core of it. So we follow that bulky drilling fluid in an annulus is something that can show up in pretty much any engineering field. So in that sense, think about this class as a very broad formation for pretty much solving any type of problems. You end up specializing when you start working. You end up specializing for getting the feel or good feel for certain types of fluids and how to move them around. And the pressure you need to move certain type of fluids differ from field to field. There's no doubt about it. But in its essence, the equations we're going to solve are pretty much basically similar for processes. And one thing that also differs, big deal, is scales. So the cylinder could be micrometers. So if I was a biomedical engineer, I would look at human body and arteries and veins. And they basically go from micrometer to, my biggest one is what? Centimeter is scale. That's it, right? Scales in petroleum engineering are always larger. So we are these days, if I'm thinking about microstructure of the rock, yes, I have micrometer scales. These days in shale, we even have smaller, so nanometer scales. But then my actual well is much larger, and that's Boston pipeline is even larger, right? So we do go through over broader range of scales than the biomedical engineer. So those scales and what are the types of applications that differ, but at its core, the equations are similar across engineering fields. In all of these, we are going to assume what's called continuum, so we're not going to necessarily look into the molecular scale and the details of molecules. We're going to assume we have enough molecules in the box to call something the water phase or the water phase without zooming into the details. So this is this is formally said that space and time form a continuum. Okay? So those are macroscopic and microscopic scales. So we're not going to zoom in. This is basically from the textbook where you will see it. So basically we're going to go from this up. That said, the essential properties of the fluids, especially what I refer to as rheological properties, viscosity, how gunky is my fluid, ultimately come down to the molecular properties, the intermolecular forces. But we kind of average them and then just move on. Okay. And our key tool for solving problems is conservation equations. So we postulate that mass of the phase or individual components, heat, energy, and momentum in a closed system are conserved. Okay. To kind of lose your momentum, you kind of just give it to somebody else. So in that exchange, as long as you're looking at a closed system, you're not going to or shouldn't have losses. And that's the essential, it's almost like common sense that allows us to pose those equations, and those are that's the tools in the language of the transport phenomenon. So this is it for the reading part, for the just the brief motivation and introduction part. I invite you to find what's referred to as Chapter 0. There are some, I'm just basically providing where I took the pictures from. So there is the importance of oil and natural gas in society, that's Energy for Me book, and the information of what the production, consumption, not just in the United States, all over the world, good source of information is U.S. Energy Information Administration. That is something that is updated regularly, so you can also see forecasts and projections. And also individual companies in petroleum engineering will also publish their outlook typically around January. That's where we can look at those. So I will just now open up a syllabus and let's just briefly, in the last 10 minutes, go over some rules. So we have introduced instructors. You will have tutors in this class, just like any other class, many other classes. There's about a total of 8 tutors available. So 5 of them are available to this class. When you take a look at the names that are printed as tutors, do you know everyone? Is there a need for me to bring them to class to introduce themselves, or do you know where to find them? So please, you have to, at this point, learn what is comfortable for you. We welcome you coming to office hours. My office hours means office hours, and then tutors will probably have their walking hours. However, it is for you to identify that you need help. I'm not going to come and knock on your doors and say, hey, people ultimately knock on your door during the exam and homework assignments. So you have, it does start from you. Help is available. And don't hesitate, this is something that is a different, I'm not quite sure where this one right there. But I'll figure out that in the video at the end. So please contact tutors early and often, as well as help in the class. The objectives in this course, again, are to derive and solve equations that are relevant to various transport types in petroleum engineering. And you will see how it's going to build the impact on the rest of your courses, specifically drilling, production engineering, and reservoir engineering. And we will start introducing some of the basic equations that you're going to build upon in those courses. Prerequisites, I believe that you all satisfied themselves before we were sitting in this class, and of course materials are covered already. We will, after this, so we basically knocked out this motivation and syllabus review today, and we're going to start with something called dimensional analysis next time. And our first homework will be based on the dimensional analysis. It's sort of an introductory topic, teaching us how to reduce the number of things we need to look at. Okay, and that's always helpful when the analysis starts getting lengthy. Essentially, what it comes down to, so I'm just going to quickly review that topic because we're starting next time. What it comes down to is that if I have a pipe and I have fluids flowing through the pipe, so I describe the fluid, typically we use density and viscosity. Then I describe the pipe. Pipe has a cross-section and the length. So we typically look at the radius of the pipe and its length. And then we actually have the gradient of pressure driving the whole thing. So I have basically listed at least 5 things that we're looking at already. Now, can I reduce and figure out that I need to look at only 3? That will reduce my work. If I'm designing an experiment, I typically have to go for the number of relevant driving this flow, number of relevant pipe sizes, both in terms of radius and length, number of different fluids, and this can easily go on. So dimensional analysis is basically a tool telling us, look, you don't really need to look at both different radii of the pipe and length of the pipe, as long as you're keeping the ratio of the radius to length, you're good. So just look at the number of those ratios. Those are what we call dimensional groups, and they actually help us reduce the problem we're looking at. So instead of looking at 5 things, I really need to look at 2 groups of things. And those groups basically are dimensionless, which also helps me then to translate my problem from in between different types of pipes and different types of fluids that I want to scale the problem. That is a very useful tool that we're going to start on. In terms of software, we're not going to use SI units mostly, but here and there will be examples of translating because petroleum engineering extensively does not use SI units, so we do need to know how to convert in between. And there are some of the unit conversions that are available in the appendix of that same textbook that I mentioned. Software, we're not going to focus on software, but that's in here and there. It's going to be helpful to use either MATLAB or Python. By show of hands, who did 310 in MATLAB? A couple of people, okay. And then the rest of you are Python. I'm going to be a reference point for Python. Well, I can help with both. And Min is mostly trained in MATLAB, but we're going to teach her Python along the way. If not, there's more graduate students in my group. Min is always available if you have Min as a TA. So, really the choice of what we're going to use to plot something is not so important. It's really just, we're going to do some curve fitting, especially for viscosity of fluids. So we're going to refresh your knowledge of curve fitting for sure. That's one of the most common uses of curve fitting. So whether you do that in Python or MATLAB or I don't have a third choice, I don't really care as long as you effectively use it for the purposes of homeworks in this class. And then exams, I have already scheduled 2 evening exams. Okay? March 11 and April 22nd. So I will send you an email asking to confirm that those dates are okay. As long as I'm the first one scheduling an exam during that time, it should be. If they're not okay for some reasons, let me know. But basically, I want to set them this first week and be done with that scheduling. In finals, all we know is that it's on May 14th, no, it's on no. There will be homework assignments almost every week. Very basic rule is that you're going to give homework 1 week after you give it. And then Min is supposed to grade it within 1 week of that. If she doesn't, you let me know. If you're not comfortable emailing me, there is actually at the end of this, and this is also available as a PDF on Canvas, and I'm going to post that. You can use that online Google form where you can be anonymous. So please communicate however it is that you're comfortable communicating. I'm very good at forgetting. I will never really remember what you asked me. Don't feel bad or not ask something because you think I might remember you during. No, I will not. Can't trust it. There's so many things are happening that within 2 weeks I don't remember anything that anybody asked me beyond 2 weeks. So no question is a bad question. Just freely ask them. Now that we're in the evening exam, I want to actually put an entire section on be safe in the back. If you are walking or studying late or you're at an event or possibly at an exam, please try to pair up when walking around campus for your own safety. And if you don't have a friend that you can walk with that you know, there's Sure Walk, and there's information about it. I think UT also has a deal with Lyft for UT night rides. Simple, it could be as simple as just letting somebody know. I don't know what app you might be using. I use Glimpse. So I share my location sometimes with my husband and say I'm starting to walk now. And he can see the map. So it's useful both for meeting people, but it's also just for safety. Somebody knows where you are. So please be safe, especially around exams. You're going to get distracted. You're going to be tired. You're not going to sleep enough. In those cases, somebody can quickly snatch your computer and leave it. Okay? So it's just safer to go in pairs and walk around. Something can happen to anyone, so it's always better to be safe. And you want to plan for it now. You want to have things on your phone and handy right now. So if you need a moment right now, put some of these phone numbers in, please do that. Because once you actually need it, you might be in a shock and not be able to find, oh, where's my syllabus, where's the printout, where can I search online? So put certain things in place right now that you're not stressed out this week, most likely, or you're certainly the least stressed this semester, this week. Set certain things in place that. And then any kind of feedback, again, please let me know. If you have any difficulties for the special needs, probably by now you know the office that can help you. If I get a letter, you can get extra time during the exam, if that's something that would help. I think just having recordings online should solve a lot of problems in terms of understanding the content. And grading will be 15% homework, and then the rest will be spread in between exams. And you've probably seen how I grade already. I think that's pretty much what I want to discuss here with you. If you have any questions, you're all ready to go. All right, well, I see you on Friday.